Wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet. And then, and only then, can we get started. Let's check in and see how we're doing here. Looks like we're cracking on Facebook. YouTube is rolling in here. Let's see what's going on over at Rumble. Maybe I forgot to put that one in there. But all right, so it looks like let's make sure YouTube's good. And I think we're ready to rock and roll. So let's go ahead and get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We have judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got some news to get into. We're going to start off by talking about the CDC eviction moratorium. I know for many people this is not sort of the juiciest topic of the day, but it is pretty important because we're talking about property rights and what the balance of power is here. How can the executive branch really just come in here and take people's property rights right from them and just hand it to other people? So slightly concerning. We're going to do a quick refresher on what's going on here, revisit the SCOTUS order, check in with North Carolina, see what a landlord there looks like, what they're sort of going through. And then we're actually going to look at a motion, an emergency motion that the Alabama Association of Realtors filed right after the CDC granted that moratorium extension. And we're going to go through there and just take a look at what they're saying. You know, why is this so problematic for property owners, for landlords, for people that want to maintain their property rights? So we're going to go through that at some length. A little bit of heavy lifting. We're going to go through a lawsuit on that one, but I think it's well worth it. Then we're going to change gears. In the second segment, we're going to be talking about Donald Trump and his taxes because he filed a counterclaim, a countersuit, cross claims. He's suing everybody. There's all sorts of complexities happening in his case, but the real big question that we want to answer is whether or not what the Democrats are doing satisfies the Constitution and satisfies basically the excuse that the Office of Legal Counsel provided for justifying the disclosure of Trump's statements. We're asking ourselves, is there a legitimate basis for what the Democrats want? They have been going hog wild for a long time now trying to get these things. And the OLC came out and said, you can have them. Donald Trump is now responding and saying, no, you can't. This is not a legitimate purpose. This is all being done for partisan reasons. Of course, he's right about that. So we're going to look at his counterclaim, his counter lawsuit in the second segment and go through that. And then lastly, we're going to have a little bit of fun here today. You know, I ordinarily don't like to really spike the football on the other side, but we've got to. We can't help it here. We've got Representative AOC who got caught in a mask kerfuffle over there. So we're going to poke fun at that. And then Cori Bush is chiming in on the defund the police movement. Still, that is something that is at the forefront of her ambitions. She wants to make sure that the police are defunded so that you and your families don't necessarily have safety or security in your localities, as long as she's safe and secure because she has private security, because she's a very fancy, very important congressperson, and you and me are not. So we're going to talk about what's going on with Cori Bush and much more on the show today. So if you want to be a part of it, the place to do that is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have a live chat going on right now. Big shout outs over there to Freedom Lives. We've got Sarah Smothers in the house. Jeremy Matrita joined up. We have Sweet Potato is in the house, along with Freedom Lives and Kenny 1B, Mama Rock, and many others. Over on YouTube, we've got Just Cause. I see him regularly. We got Steve Orino, 45, is in the house, along with Zulu, K-Bean. We have Half Irish and George Klaus and many others. And there's a lot of different ways where you can support the show and sort of be involved in the show. One of them is if you're a supporter at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We have this form that you can use to chime in with a question or comment. And if you're a supporter over there, feel free to, of course, use this form liberally. We certainly want to hear from you. All right, so let's jump into the news of the day. Let me swap this screen over here so I can remember where we're starting off. I've got it, so let's get going. The CDC eviction moratorium, we've been following this thing this week because it was supposed to expire. In fact, this has been extended many, many times. What we're talking about here is people are living in homes, living in rental properties, and they have been living there for some period of time and evidently not paying their rent to their landlords. So it'd be like you going and saying, yes, I'd love to live here. Thank you very much. I'm agreeing to pay you $1,000 a month rent. And then suddenly you stop paying your rent and the government comes back down and says, well, you can't be thrown out of that property anymore because of why? COVID, because everything is based on COVID these days. So this has been going on for some time. We talked about this earlier in the week. This has been granted, extended many, many times ever since COVID started, and it just got extended again. Many people were finally saying, oh gosh, finally, we're going to be able to get back to exercising our property rights without having the government sort of seize those away from us and justify it on the back of COVID. And we're going to see a little bit of a return to form, a return to order where property rights are valued and appreciated. And it was supposed to expire. It didn't. So we're going to go through a quick crash course refresh on what's happening with this case now that we have that background. Remember, the extensions kept being granted. The CDC every month or so said, we got more COVID, so we need more extensions. We can't throw people out of their homes, even though they're not paying their rent indefinitely. And so there's no limiting principle here. So finally, the Supreme Court got really tired of these continuances and came out and said, hey, you can't continue to do this. This was the Supreme Court order. The pertinent line here is down at the bottom. It says, in my view, if you want additional continuations of the eviction, you need clear and specific congressional authorization to do it. The CDC must get it from Congress to extend the moratorium past July 31st. Of course, that was just a few days ago, and many people in Congress didn't even care about that. The Supreme Court spoke, said you need congressional approval. What did Congress have to say about that? Congress said, well, we don't care. Here's Maxine Waters. She says, well, okay, nobody cares about what SCOTUS says. She says, I don't buy that the CDC can't extend the moratorium. Who's going to stop them? Who's going to penalize them? There's no official ruling that they cannot do it, even though I just read it to you. She says, come on, CDC, have a heart, just do it. And so the CDC, as we know, did it. They just went ahead and did it. Even though SCOTUS said there's really no constitutional underpinnings, even though the White House, through Press Secretary Jen Psaki, said that according to us, the White House ourselves, even CDC Director Rochelle Walensky and her team have been unable to find legal authority for a new and targeted eviction moratorium. We're redoubling our efforts to find what we can find. And of course, there is nothing there. SCOTUS said so. White House acknowledged it. Joe Biden acknowledged it. Many other people have acknowledged it. But the White House did it anyways. Why is this problematic? Well, of course, it's because it's the executive branch that is making these decisions, and you don't vote for these people. Nobody voted for Rochelle Walensky. She's been sort of appointed there. She made it into Biden's cabinet, is delegated power through the Health and Human Services branch. She is one of the directors in HHS, and she is in control of the CDC. And now she just issues orders whenever she wants, apparently, even in violation of what SCOTUS says. The Supreme Court says there's no basis for this. She went ahead and did it anyways. You can see this here. This order came out. Summary, the CDC is now issuing a new order, like a little dictator, that she's just going to make the changes anyway. It says, according to this, you shall not evict any covered person from any residential property in any county or U.S. territory while the country is experiencing substantial or high levels of community transmission of COVID. And so the limiting principle there, are we ever going to be in low transmissions of COVID anymore, right? It's sort of, I think, here to stay. And is the CDC just going to continue to indefinitely grant people the ability to seize property, to live in property, to use property, to convert the property of somebody else into their own without any compensation for it? Yeah, the CDC said no problem at all. We know SCOTUS doesn't like that, but that's just too bad. We're going to do it. Why? COVID. We're going to move elections around. We're going to collect ballots after the deadlines. We're going to justify waiving signature ballots and everything. We're actually going to lock you in your homes so that you can't go out and enjoy a little bit of that American freedom and participate in your businesses because of COVID. All of your civil liberties are slowly being watered away, and you know it, right? It's not hyperbolic. It's actually happening right in front of our very eyes. And so you're going to see the cascading effects of this as they continue to unfold. And it's not just me saying that this is insane, this is illegal, this is unconstitutional. Even The jokers at the Washington Post acknowledge it. We talked about this yesterday. His novel evictions defense. Maybe it's illegal, but it's worth it, right? So we know where this is going. We know the media is trying to cover for this unlawful administration. And what's going to happen about it? Well, we're going to take a look at it. Now it's going back through the district courts. We're going to look at what the Alabama Association of Realtors are upset about and go through their lawsuit, because they've been sort of at the forefront of this. It was their case that worked its way up to the Supreme Court in the first place. And so they filed an emergency motion explaining why this is problematic and asking the court to vacate that unlawful, unconstitutional order. And so we're going to go through that. Before I do, I want to play this clip. This gentleman from North Carolina was on Fox and Friends. I think this was this morning. And he's just he's telling about some of his troubles, right? He's just a landlord, somebody who has a rental property, somebody who is sort of generating value in the world by creating other places for people to live, entering into a contract with them that he's going to provide that for them, and they are going to pay their rents until the government says, oh, you actually don't have to pay your rents, and there are no consequences for that. You can just stay there indefinitely, and then you're going to have all of these additional burdens that the landlords have to pay. Remember, this is an infringement on their property rights. This is the government saying you had a right before. If those renters didn't pay their bills, you had recourse. You could evict them. Now there is no limitation to that. And so many people will say, well, there are provisions where they can go get back rent and they can go, sue them or whatever. That puts the collectability problem on the backs of the property owners. That's saying that the government, if the government is going to make all of these people whole, it's their obligation to do it. And they have failed to do that because the government is incompetent. They're not capable of micromanaging 7 million transactions and making sure that they can be like little parents for all of the people. Did you pay your rent this week? Did you pay your rent this week? They're not going to be able to do that and disperse the funds in a way that's going to be meaningful. And so it's their burden here. Just compensation, they're not providing that. They're saying that the property owners at some point are going to get it. But listen to this, gentlemen. Listen what's happening. Property owners are living large at his expense, on his dollar. And the government just said, well, sorry about that. We're going to continue to do it because we need that house more than you do. Here it is from Fox and Friends.
And the bad part, the one thing that wasn't shown in that, the guy didn't pay me rent, and evidently was getting money from somewhere, and he had 3 boats. Well, lo and behold, the middle of the summer, their air conditioner went out. And so I had to put about a $4,500 heat pump on that house to make sure that they stayed cool. And I didn't receive any rent or anything. So, it goes way beyond the loss of rental income. We're still bound by county rules and laws. We have to maintain the property.
Yeah, it's infuriating. I told the story when I was in Cuba. Something like this happened. And I mean, this was something that we heard from somebody who lived in Cuba. And they said, telling us the history of what happened there. And I've told the story here on the channel before. But the idea was in Cuba, there might have been somebody that had a 5-bedroom house, right? It might have been, Mr. Rob and Mrs. Rob at some point with no kids. You got a 5-bedroom house for 2 people. Well, at one point in time, that might have been allowed there. And and after the revolution, after that was seen as something that was unequal, they decided to make a change. You have 4 extra bedrooms. You don't need all 5. You need 1 bedroom. There's 2 of you. You can use 1. We have other people here that need those rooms more than you do. And so the government just said they're living with you now, right? And I went through here when we talked about when Viva Cuba and Cuba Libertad was going on. I went through the photographs of the Cuban buildings, and you can see where the property divisions would take place, where somebody would care about their property and somebody else that had no real property interest in that facility would just let it crumble and fall to pieces. And so the same thing is happening right now on the back of the government. They're saying that we need that property more than you do, landlord. And there are going to be people who are living there with boats, just kind of enjoying it. It's a windfall for many of them that they're not going to have to pay back. And the government is allowing this to happen. And it's a slow watering down of your property rights. You have that is this man's property, and the government is taking it from him. So totally irresponsible, totally illegal, and unconstitutional. And fortunately, we have some people in this country who still have some backbones. This is from the National Association of Realtors. They say that they are filing an emergency lawsuit. We have the Alabama and Georgia Associations of Realtors. They filed an emergency motion Wednesday night with Judge Dabney Friedrich out of the U.S. District Court. We're going to look at this motion here in a second, as well as the court docket. We have state associations with the National Associations of Realtors. They brought a lawsuit in fall of 2020. They challenged this originally. This was the case that worked its way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said, yeah, you got a good point. This is a non-legislative body that continues to pass these extensions. That's not constitutional. Friedrich ruled with the housing providers, but put her ruling on hold pending an appeal, which ultimately kept the moratorium in place. So, housing providers asked the D.C. Circuit Court to lift the stay so that they could stop the moratorium, petition the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene, and then end the ban immediately. On June 29th, a majority of the Supreme Court indicated that the CDC lacked authority to implement a national eviction moratorium. The High Court allowed the ban to expire at the end of July, stated that any further extension would need congressional authorization. We've talked about that. July 31st was supposed to be the end of it. June 29th, they had plenty of notice about this. AOC, Cori Bush, all of the other Democrats who got evicted from the House and they were sleeping on the steps of the Capitol building, they knew this was coming. Nancy Pelosi knew this was coming. Joe Biden knew this was coming. And so they were all just sort of, oh, well, we can't do anything. And then it's slowly being revealed that they're just going to dump this all back on the Supreme Court. In a brilliant strategy, if I can say so myself, they're going to say, well, the court really put the limit on this. And now the court is going to be evicting 7 million people as soon as they find this to be unconstitutional, and that's going to give the Democrats a beautiful scapegoat, and they're going to be able to sort of justify packing the court at that moment in time, because the very evil conservative Supreme Court is upholding the Constitution, but by their manipulation of that consequence, it's going to be reframed as they're throwing 7 million people out of their homes. Blame landlords or slumlords, or blame capitalism and the really draconian landlords who have no empathy for the poor people in this country. That's where it's going to go. So they have actually renewed a motion. Let's go over to the court docket here from Alabama. We can see that it says on August 3rd, we have a notice. Okay, now, so I mentioned this. This is kind of fun, actually. We have a notice here from Alex William Barr, Centers for Disease Control, Robert Redfield, U.S. Department of Health, and Nina Witowski, Myers and Stevens. Okay, so they filed this notice. And remember what we talked about, I think it might have even been yesterday, where we said that the CDC here was not asking for permission. They're just going to do it, and they're going to beg for forgiveness later down the line. So they know what the court said. Everybody knows what the court said. And the CDC said, well, we don't have any constitutional authority. We got your order. Jen Psaki was acknowledging it. Joe Biden was acknowledging it. We have no ability to do this. They did it anyways because they're not asking for permission. They're going to be begging for forgiveness, but they don't even care about forgiveness because they're making the pitch that the Supreme Court is illegitimate. And this is priming the pump for them to pack the courts. So what they did here is they said, well, we're just going to give you notice. We know what you said, that this is unconstitutional and we need congressional authorization, but we're going to do it anyways. And here's a little bit of notice for you. So they're just going to that's it, just notice. So we're going to take a look at how they're saying, excuse me, court, excuse me, we're taking your order and cramming it back down in your face. We don't care what you said. We're going to do it anyways. Here's our notice that we're doing it. So we're going to look at that. Then we have the next day on August 4th, we have an emergency motion to enforce the Supreme Court's ruling. The realtors come back and say, all we're asking for here is that court, you enforce what the Supreme Court said, the highest court in the land. We're asking you to just enforce their order. They want to vacate the stay pending the appeal by the Alabama Association of Realtors. So we'll take a look at that as well. For the lawyers out there, if you want to find this case, here is the case number. That's down there in the slides as well. Okay, so we're going to start off by looking at the notice, right? This is where the CDC comes back and they say, yeah, Judge, we got it. We know we're not supposed to do this, but we're doing it anyways. They say notice filed on 8/3, the same day that they announced the policy. Excuse me, court, defendants respectfully notify the court that on July 31st, CDC eviction moratorium that is the subject of this lawsuit, it expired. Yeah, we know that. And you didn't do anything about it. But they said on August 3rd, however, the CDC issued a new order entitled Temporary Halt in Residential Evictions. Why? Because it determined it was necessary, especially in light of a recent spread caused by the Delta variant. Oh, and they link you to gousa.gov, yeah. Unlike the other previous order, this order applies exclusively in areas experiencing substantial or high transmission. Okay, so you see what's happening here? They used this one sentence to justify their non-following of the order. Unlike the previous order, this one applies exclusively to areas experiencing high or substantial transmission. Applies through October 3rd. Respectfully submitted here, Your Honor, by Brian Boynton and Eric Beckenhauer, two acting assistant attorney generals and the assistant director of the federal programs bench, signed off on here by Stephen Myers, all lawyers, in my opinion, who are breaking their oaths to the Constitution by filing this very clearly unconstitutional document, but that's their prerogative. They're free to do that. And I'm sure they don't believe that, so whatever. Anyways, the point here, this is what they said. We're going to break the Constitution. Here's our receipt for that. Here you go, Judge, because they just have to notify them of that. So they provided their notice. We'll see what the court has to say about it. Now, the Association of Realtors, they came in and they filed this response: the emergency motion to enforce the court's ruling, the Supreme Court's ruling, and to vacate the stay pending the appeal. Right? So they want anything that is preventing them from lifting the moratorium for allowing evictions to proceed to go away. Okay, we're talking about vacating the stay pending an appeal and all of these different legal terms. They want the ability for evictions to start again. And currently, there is a current order from an executive branch. The Supreme Court said you can't do that, and so they need somebody to clear this up. They're starting down here at the U.S. District Court, and they're going to work their way back up. This is the Alabama Association's argument. They're saying, hey, listen, this is why we need you to do this. The CDC, this is their fourth extension of the eviction moratorium until October. It conflicts directly with the Supreme Court's ruling saying they could not do this beyond July 31st. After the court entered final judgment, the eviction moratorium, they said it's unambiguously foreclosed by the plain language of the Public Health Service Act, right? So they're giving us some legal basis here. Justice Kavanaugh explained in his order that they need clear and specific congressional authorization via new legislation, specifically in there. As that date approached, the White House as well repeatedly stated that the Supreme Court's ruling had unequivocally blocked the CDC from extending eviction moratorium through executive action. Taking a cue from Justice Kavanaugh's controlling concurrence, Congress attempted to pass legislation but failed. After Congress failed to extend, the Speaker of the House and others demanded that the CDC extend the moratorium through executive action. Anyways, even though it's unconstitutional, then became a tidal wave of political pressure put upon the CDC. One member of Congress, I don't know why she is still a member of Congress, because this has been something that she's had a lot of difficulty with, sort of getting her foot out of her mouth. But this is Maxine Waters, says, who is going to stop them? Who is going to penalize them? CDC held firm for a few days with support from the White House, saying that the Supreme Court ruling had tied the CDC's hands. But then on August 3rd, the CDC caved to political pressure by extending the moratorium without any legal basis other than, it's highly transmissible. And this order is a little bit different because we got that one sentence there that said, well, this applies to areas where there's substantial or highly, transmissible numbers. That was their legal basis. They didn't address the unconstitutionality of what SCOTUS was implying. They did not say anything about, separation of powers argument or have any underpinnings anywhere. I showed you what the notice said. It's it. One paragraph. We did it because we had to do it. Nothing substantive there at all. All right. In substance and effect, the CDC's latest action is an extension of the same unlawful bans that we had previously. We need another source of authority. They go back to Section 361 of the Public Health Acts. They say that the CDC's recasting of the latest extension, which covers 90% of renters across the country while leaving intact its ability to ratchet it up to 100%, is a distinction without a difference because it has no bearing on the CDC's legal authority, which is exactly what I just said. It's the idea that the CDC justified this new order on the basis of they're distinguishing it from their old order. It's not the same as our old order. This is different, Supreme Court. We know that you said we couldn't do that one again. We're not doing that one again. We're doing something different. The other one applied to 100% of the country. This one applies to 90%. The Association of Realtors are saying they had no ability to do it in the first place. They couldn't pass the 100% because there's no constitutional underpinning to do so. So the CDC comes back out and says, well, okay, so we know, but we're just going to reduce it from 100 to 90. That's going to make it a little bit different. And they're going to try to skate that one through the courts. And so the judge will say, I told you can't do that. And they're going to turn around and say, yeah, but we're not doing that. We're doing this. Huh, judge? You know, if that was like your 12-year-old, right? That kid is grounded for that childish argument. But the CDC just going to make it. All right, this court, according to the realtors, they're telling us this court should immediately vacate the CDC's fourth extension because it conflicts with the Supreme Court's ruling. A majority of the Supreme Court made clear that this was exceeding the CDC's statutory authority, could not be extended beyond July 31st. This vindicates the court's rulings. The Supreme Court was not ambiguous at all. The White House acknowledged their ruling. The CDC acknowledged the ruling. But they did it anyways. They're saying that this court should now enforce this ruling by vacating the August 3rd extension. So like literally taking the CDC's order and just flushing it down the toilet, or simply clarifying under the original order that covers it, vacating this order of the May 14th that was granting. So they're actually saying they wanted to go back all the way to May. That order, get rid of that order first. They want expedited rulings. They say, this is all needs to happen quickly because there's a lot of political pressure that is well underway. The court should block August 3 extension on an expedited basis to relieve the nation's property owners of the burden of complying with this unlawful agency action. Yeah, there's a huge burden for this. That's sort of what's so mind-blowing about this thing. It's like, they have extra houses. They're not using them, so we can just throw a bunch of people in there and not have them pay their rent and have those landlords continue to prop them up, non-paying renters for indefinitely with no end in sight. People don't recognize how traumatic not having certainty is for business owners. It is a huge stinking problem, and that applies to residential and real estate owners, right? People who are using these properties to cash flow other things that they're trying to do and be productive with in society. The government comes in and says, no, you're gone, right? There are many people that this is their business. They are property companies. They maintain properties full time. And they're all just being, sorry, it's your fault. And if it's not your fault, it's the state's fault. So regardless, the government is screwing you any which way you look. And the citizens, I guess, are the evil people, these landlords, for wanting to maintain their property rights. Give me a break. All right, here's the argument. It says all parties agree. Supreme Court's ruling blocked the CDC from extending the moratorium because clear and specific authorization is needed. No question that the fourth extension conflicts directly with the Supreme Court's ruling because Congress did not pass new legislation authorizing another extension. You see how simple this is? Look at this. It's like one paragraph. The only question is what this court should do about it. The court, they say, should enforce the Supreme Court's ruling by vacating the August 3rd extension from the CDC and stay the pending appeal, restore the status quo that a majority of the Supreme Court expected to exist after July 31st. It's good stuff. Here's the conclusion. This was written here by Brett Shumate over from D.C. in the D.C. Circuit Court August 4th. And we also have a quick note that the order, this was received on August 4th. We have a new minute entry now on August 5th that says that the defendants here, which is going to be the CDC, they shall file any opposition to the emergency motion before August 6th at 9 a.m. All right. And the plaintiffs shall file any reply before August 6th at 7 p.m. So the notice of appearance by John Robb. Okay, so all of that is additional. So let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I saw some super chats come in as well. Let's see what we've got coming in here. We'll start off with the form and see what we've got. All right, we got some questions coming in hot. We're going to get started here with I'm Not Gas says, did Trump know about COVID years early? Kofafefi is COVID for everyone forever. A Clockwork Elf told me about this on my last DMT trip. Well, yeah, that's it. He might be a man from the future, Donald Trump. he is a bit pretty prescient on a lot of other issues. We have Hugh Janis. Hugh Janis is here in the house, says, I love this moratorium extension. I troll my landlords on Twitter, so I live in their heads rent-free while I live in their home rent-free. So that's okay. Are we getting trollers on here? We're gonna have to change the form. We have Vienticus Prime is here, says, I just thought it would be prudent to point out a couple statistics. The first is that many banks and funds bought up much of the trailer park real estate a while ago, now charge everyone out the wazoo for rent. So now in some areas, a trailer home is effectively a luxury. The second is that in 2019, the amount of employed homeless people went up. I forget the exact numbers. I think it was from 25% to 40%. And it wasn't because homeless people were getting jobs. Yeah, it's just good data there. There's going to be a lot of, effects from this for the foreseeable future. We're going to see all sorts of, bubbles and unintended consequences in ways that I don't think anybody's expecting. Want to know says, who voted for the CDC? They weren't even on the ballot. Must have been on the back. Was there a Sharpie bleed through? That's from Want to know. Peely Wally says, a good day to you, Rob, and other peoples. Just wanted to say that if governments cared so much about the lives like they claim to regarding COVID, why don't they ban the sale of cigarettes completely and alcohol too? Oh, wait, let's destroy economies for a disease with a survival rate that's high. I wouldn't trust any country leaders, including my own, with trying to work out a two-piece jigsaw. The lunatics have taken over the asylum. Right. Or how about exercise, right? How about mandatory exercise for people if they really cared about lives? Because a lot of people who are passing away from COVID have weight-related illnesses. And I don't think you're allowed to say that. I think it's illegal now. We have ATL, which I think is Atlanta says, how does the government expect landlords to have the money to keep up these properties? Well, they said that there's a big slush fund of COVID money out somewhere. And apparently the state governments have it and they're sitting in it in a bank account somewhere. I don't know. They printed a bunch of money, and I think that their solution was that it should just magically appear in your bank account, and you as a landlord should just go, oh, that solved my problems. No other concerns there at all. Of course, that didn't happen. Feisty Lady says, what would be the landlord's liability if something were to happen to the property? For example, a fully insured property is suddenly destroyed through a tragic fire, making it uninhabitable. Is the owner required to rebuild, or do you have to set up a tent on the remaining lot for the tenants? JK. Thank you, Feisty Lady. If you didn't have a JK in there, I don't know. I don't know how I've interpreted that question, because we certainly don't want to, imply arson or something like that. But it's a funny question. Thank you for the comment. We have another one here from Jupa, says, total tyranny. Robert, if this is unconstitutional, how can these penalties against property owners be enforced? It is clear that this administration has quickly become a dictatorship, and the Dems are happily along for the ride. So as I was sort of gaming out yesterday on the show, the courts are going to have a lot of say in all of these issues, right? This is a direct conflict between the executive branch and the Supreme Court, which is our judicial branch. And a lot of this stuff is going to take place in the court of law. So let's say in a battle between, the CDC comes out and says, well, we're enforcing it. SCOTUS says you can't. And you get prosecuted for, let's say, evicting somebody. And we know that there are criminal penalties associated with that, because they're in the CDC's order. They say if you kick somebody out of your property in violation of this order, 1 year in jail, $100,000 fine. We talked about that yesterday. So if that happens, if somebody's living in your property, you throw them out, DOJ through Merrick Garland, they come and get you and nab you up. They take you into a court. They say, we're charging you with this crime. And you submit a motion. That was an illegal order. It was an unconstitutional order, judge. That judge is now going to be responsive to the Supreme Court, not to the Justice Department. That's the executive branch. So there is still a little bit of a firewall there, provided that the Supreme Court does something about this. Maybe they won't, right? Maybe they'll say, oh, it's COVID, like everything else. Vienticus Prime says, I never looked into it, but a while ago I was curious about how all these moratoriums and restricting of business hours fall under eminent domain, even if temporary. What are your thoughts on that, if this hasn't been talked about already? So I didn't really see it in the term of sort of eminent domain, like what the government was doing was being framed as a taking, where they would have to give you just compensation for any of that. All of this was really done under the government's emergency powers to sort of regulate public health. This is a governmental emergency, and so they just have other exceptions. They don't have to use, eminent domain is a little bit more routine. It's like, we want to build a freeway and we need your houses. Okay, so there's a tried and true mechanism for taking that property away from you, just compensation, all sorts of case law and all that stuff. So it really wasn't used in that manner, this legal doctrine. It was all brought about by the government's special powers. And I mean, literally, I talked about a while ago when COVID was first coming, we had a gym that was being closed here, and he filed this under a lot of these different claims, filed a request for an injunction to stop the closure of this man's gyms, and the courts just came back out, and I read through the opinion, and I looked, there is no legal basis for it, what they were doing. They're just saying it's COVID, the governor has a bunch of powers, and so he can do it whatever he wants. And that was happening all across the states. And we spent a lot of time talking about the election litigation lawsuits. What was the basis for moving things around, for changing deadlines, for just waiving, COVID. Nothing else. It's an emergency. These are trying times, and so we're just going to make the changes and deal with it if you don't like it. So that's about as far as we got on that. Farmer's Daughter 4 says, crisis really brings out a person's true character. There's probably people who really struggle to pay but find a way, while others who can easily afford it don't. Right. Because what are the consequences? And especially, what is the consequence for landlords who have multiple tenants now? Do they have, or is it their responsibility to go sue and recoup all of the damages that they've lost? So the government is putting a burden on them to be the government's housing managers? Because they can't do it? All right, so makes my blood boil. All right, we've got another one here from Todd. Todd Trout says, Rob, we have spent trillions of dollars of stimulus so people can pay their rent, but they have spent it on other things. The government has it backwards. We should teach people to fish instead of just giving them the fish. Yes, I love that, Todd. I love that. I agree with that through and through. All right, we got some super chats that came in. Want to make sure we don't miss these. We've got one from Claire. Nice super chat. Says, I have a property management company that relies on people paying their rent for us to operate. Yes, a company that does this. We don't manage huge complexes owned by big corporations. I have employees that count on me for their livelihood. Yes. Yes, it's an entire business, and it's a very valuable business. Look around your town. There are many people that are living in apartments, providing housing. There are housing crises all over the country. And the government is shattering the entire supply chain of this. Probably intentionally. Thank you for that, Claire. We have Susie Kazarin says, draconian landlords, some people have been living for free for a year. I totally agree with you. If I said draconian landlords, which I probably did, I was probably being facetious, right? They're not draconian. These are everyday Americans. Essentially small business owners, most of them. They have an extra property because they upgraded, right? They buy a starter house, they move into a bigger house, they rent the old one out, and that enables another family to get a house that maybe they couldn't provide otherwise. If BlackRock, for example, bought that property and inflated the prices up dramatically. What the Democrats are doing in the name, they do this all the time. What they're doing in the name of empathy and care and the humanitarian thing to do, we're just trying to help people stay in their homes. It's the long-term consequences of this are those people are going to be more hurt than anybody, right? Their credits are going to probably be wrecked. They're going to, be totally underwater. They should have, the government is incentivizing them. It's causing them to fail. And it's going to blame the people who are trying to be productive in society. Atlas shrugged, right? We have, thank you, Susie, for that. We have Ravich Gianatrong says, so let me get this straight. I'm a restaurant owner in New York, so this whole time I could have just not paid for my rent. I don't think so. I think it's residential, but your home, yeah, your home, or if you're renting a place or you're living in an apartment, yeah, that's what I'm saying. You could have done that. And I'm sure there are many people that have done that made a conscious decision to just say, well, not going to pay. Why should I? Why should they? We have Want to Know back over from Local says, landlords in Portland only get 80% or nothing after waiting a long time. Some cases now, if people move out, landlords don't get anything. Government says sue them. Yeah, so the burden is back on the landlords. It's not appropriate. Sharon Quidney says, I've been saying this for the past 6 months. We no longer live in a constitutional republic. It's a totalitarian dictatorship with Cuba as an exemplar. As you pointed out with regard to the redistribution of housing. USA, rest in peace. Yeah. It is. It's a redistribution of housing. And Tucker Carlson last night said that this was a nationalization of the housing markets. He's not wrong about that. We have another one here from Speech Unleashed says, the tactic the Dems are using with the eviction moratorium is the same tactic they used to try to push through a spending bill or a budget bill by claiming if it hadn't passed, then the government will shut down. People won't get their Social Security checks. They are counting on people's fears. Well, it works. They shut down the whole stinking world over fear. So, yeah, it works. It works well. Sweet Potato says Bill Gates is the largest private farm landowner in the U.S. Even as they go full communist, it's rules for thee, but not for me. If they really believed in what they were doing with real estate, they would distribute the land Bill Gates owns. Not saying I want that to happen, but just saying, bro. Bro. I feel like that a lot, Sweet Potato. A lot. I go on, I look at the headlines, I'm like, bro, are you serious? Same on Twitter, but you're in good company. We're in good company, I think. A lot of people are with us. Davis says, what exactly does SCOTUS get to go on summer vacation with the elementary schoolers? Why do they? Isn't it their job to participate in the system of checks and balances and stop this nonsense from happening? It is. Yes, it is supposed to be. That's how it was originally written. We'll see what the Supreme Court does. If we have a real Supreme Court, they are going to backhand the White House so stinking hard that it leaves a mark, metaphorically, legally speaking, because they deserve it. What they did is snub their noses right at the Supreme Court. My gosh, could you imagine if Trump did it? We have Sharon Quidney says, and there will be no end to take over until they turn the USA into Cuba. We're going to have Delta, followed by Epsilon, followed by Zeta, Eta. Wonder what they'll do when they run out of Greek letters. Well, I talked about this on Twitter yesterday. I said, well, we have Delta now. We have a Delta Plus is coming. I'm looking forward to Delta Prime, which will be a good one. You get that really quickly, like overnight, or a matter of hours if you upgrade to Delta Prime Plus. You could also have a Delta Pro Max is probably going to be another one, and Delta Ultra might be another good one. So a lot of good features coming along the way. Many upgrades. You know, who knows? Yeah, probably have a lot of those. We have I'm Not Gas says, compounding this is Janet Yellen seems to be directing states to disperse their rental assistance payments based solely on being low income. Why don't they disperse it to the landlords that are owed the money? Well, we know this is there to enrich their institutional banking friends like BlackRock, using an army of poor, helpless people as their political shield. Yeah, BlackRock, right? All of these pseudo-governmental private companies where we've got this mixture now, sort of this integration. Anything that the federal government cannot do, they just outsource that to the big tech companies, to the private corporations, and they go do those things. And the American people suffer as a result. We have Joe Biden is a racist, says that the moratorium is horrible and we need to replace the representatives on the local and state level so that we can fortify the election as well as remove critical race theory and propagate populism. Need to remove all the rhino and Democrats so we can purge the government peacefully. Ideally, the government is reduced. You can't keep doing the same moratorium and print money with no labor and expect the U.S. to survive. Yeah. It's a good point. Joe Biden is a racist. I think you're onto something there. I like what you said. We have Sharon says, hey, on the other hand, look on the bright side. If the government confiscates your property in this manner, they can take over the mortgage payments. And of course, that would keep you from having to pay property taxes. A significant deal in states like California and New York. Sharon, looking at the glass half full. You know, it's really hard to think about mortgage payments and sort of, it's hard to think in general. It's really a taxing thing to do these days. You got to question something and think about alternative theories and use logic and reason. It's a lot of work. It's much easier to just say, what do you have to say, Brian Stelter? Tell me what to do, Andrew Cuomo. Please help me, Washington Post. Oh, what's Dr. Fauci? Oh, okay, I'm just going to go do all of that. Then you don't have to think anymore. Think about how nice this would be if you don't have to actually use your brain. Life will be much easier. So just let the government take care of all of it for us. Sharon, you're not going to own anything. You're going to be happy about it. Jeremy Matrita is here. What's up? Jeremy says, I think that it's great the Supreme Court has finally stepped in and did their job. We'll see. Some might see this ruling as outrageous or out of line but they are just exercising their constitutional duty to provide the country some checks and balances. Yes. So that's provided that they actually come and do finalize that ruling, right? We know where they stand on it. They've already given us a ruling on it. We still need them to come out and smack what the government did hard because it was unconstitutional and it should not be allowed. Kenny 1B says, the governor of New Mexico disbanded an entire elected school board for refusing to impose mask mandates. What is going on in this country? Well, it's a good question, Kenny 1B. I don't know what's going on with that story, but it doesn't surprise me a bit. We're seeing that, I think, all over the place. Joe Biden is horrible, says the housing moratorium is horrible, and it's just an excuse to transfer I think I read that one. Okay, so small property owners won't give bribes, book deals, or speech money to Joe Biden. Yeah, gosh, I know. Another one here from Justice Obsessed says, as at the risk of sounding like a conspiracy theorist, do you think this is part of a bigger plan? A lot of landlords are choosing to sell all of a sudden. BlackRock is coming in, buying up all the properties. In the end, it would become government property. Yeah, so I don't think it's a conspiracy theorist at all, right? I think that these are market forces at work, and you're just noticing it, right? You're watching all of these things happen. Folks, there is a lot of money to be made in times like these, right? In times of crises. When you go back and you look at all of the robber barons, some of the early capitalists here in the United States, like the Van Burens and the Rockefellers, and all of the steels and oils and the railroads and all of that stuff, is a lot of those are sort of happened during transitionary eras in the United States. Fortunes were made over decades as society was realigning. That's happening right now. We're seeing that with the same, it's not the Rockefellers or the Van Burens. It's the Bezos, it's the Gates, it's the Zuckerbergs, it's the Google people, and they're all doing it, right? It's all of the people who are at that upper echelon. They're seeing food for the taking, and they are going and getting it, and we're observing it. It's not conspiracy theory anymore. Look around. You can look at the numbers of what BlackRock is doing, and you can see that. Great point, Justice Obsessed. Thank you for that. We have Vienticus Prime says, follow up on the eminent domain question. Even though these are being done under the doctrine of emergency powers, are the emergency powers mutually exclusive from eminent domain? Can an emergency action exist under eminent domain? So first and foremost, this is not my area of practice. If I'm answering this, I'm digging back to my law school days. But can an emergency action exist under eminent domain? So I think I understand what you're saying. Yes, I think that the answer would be yes. Harkening back to my property law, right? The government, I think historically has said, had like emergency condemnations and things like that, where they just say that is too dangerous. We have to seize that and demolish that building. We'll settle up with you after the fact, right? We're going to take your property. We're going to sort of sever your rights to keep that building up, and we're going to knock that building down. You can sue us. We're going to talk about just compensation on the back end of things, but we're not going to let you keep this property up and sort of, let this linger on for 18 months in courts. We're going to take care of that. And we're going to do it under emergency powers, and that stuff gets worked out in court after the fact. I think that's where you're going with that question. We have Democrats love Jim Crow. Says the housing moratorium is horrible. COVID is tyrannical. I think I've already read this. I wonder if Kamala can push Joe down the stairs in Roblox. No, that's no, we always preach nonviolence here. Oh, in Roblox. I think that's a video game. Impeach Kamala while putting Trump as Speaker of the House. I think Roblox is a game, isn't it? Sergeant Bob says at first an emergency, okay. Now something to just deal with. Changed. Yeah, Sergeant Bob. Yeah. The first go round, I think a lot of people were a little bit, angry, but acknowledging that this was an emergency. Now everybody's just angry because they know it's all not accurate. Sweet Potato says, can you just do, quote, routine maintenance like every day for them with the proper legal notice? Make it real annoying. So I don't know. I know that there are all sorts of renters' bill of rights that kind of exist in property law throughout the countries. And so you can't, probably not, Sweet Potato, right? Depends on how you do it. But I'm going to guess probably not, right? I'm not a property person, but good question. It's Ed says, hey, Rob, in Chicago, this is creating a slight housing bubble. It's a seller's market. Same here in Arizona. Prices are going up almost 25% in some areas. This time next year, prices will plummet and people will have to bear the burden of these idiots making illegal laws in the spirit of taking care of others. I hope someone studies the long-term effects of this and bashes Biden in the future. Yeah, so it's Ed. I think that's kind of what I've been speculating as well, right? If there are a lot of people who are in properties that they're not paying for and they're all going to be evicted, and like in Arizona, a lot of people are moving to Arizona, but there are no houses. There are no places to rent. So my hypothesis was, well, maybe there's a bunch of people who are living in houses that they should not be living in because they're not paying their bills. What happens when they all get evicted? What does that do to our very inflated housing market where our prices are high because there's no supply? A lot of demand, no supply. What happens if 7 million people are evicted and suddenly we have an overabundance of supply and not any demand? All of those markets and property values come crashing down. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but I could suspect as such. Lauren S. says, Rob, people are still responsible for current rent while they're told to pay back the past 18 months. School is starting for children across the country. Homelessness is already a problem. Where do they think these families are going to go once put out? It's a good question, Lauren. I don't know, right? I don't know. I don't know where they're going to go. And I guess that's kind of what the government is saying. Well, we don't know either. So they created a problem that they don't have a solution for, right? They're going to get evicted regardless, right? If you're a landlord and you suddenly you had a person living in your property for the last 18 months that you couldn't evict, and they were not paying you rent for 18 months, and suddenly you get a check from the government or they pay all their back rent, right? What's the likelihood that landlord is going to say, you can keep living there, we're going to re-up this lease next time? Probably not. I don't know where they're going to go, Lauren S. And quite frankly, that's not everybody's problem. That's not our problem. It is now because the government made it our problem, but historically it's not our problem. Okay, we can't fix this for everybody. People have to figure out where to live on their own. They can go back and move in with families. They can room up together. They can do all sorts of things. There are other solutions. They found a place to live in 2019 pretty fine. We didn't have a problem like this before 2019. The government closed everybody down. The government made sure that things like this could happen, inflating the bubbles and making and causing all of these disruptions in the markets. So it's going to take some time to figure it out. Or not. Or the government is just going to say, we're going to continue to extend this indefinitely, and everybody can just now live in the new property that we have absconded. Not a good solution. But I empathize with you, Lauren, right? I don't want families, I was raised by a single mom. We didn't have much. We could have been caught in something like this. And it's a sad thing. But I'll tell you this, my mom would have been paying her rent every stinking month. So I'm not sure, I'm not sure that I have a lot of empathy for people who just say, well, I'm not going to work. I'm going to go get a boat. I'm going to take a year off. That's not appropriate at all. And we shouldn't have to foot the bill for that. And we shouldn't have to do it at the expense of property rights that are fundamental to this country. All right. We got a couple more questions before we move over. 3 Girly says, John Jay is rolling over in his grave. Yes, talking about the founding father. He was also in the Federalist Papers, wasn't he? Or maybe the anti-federal. I forget what side he was on. John Jay. Yeah. No new buyers will want to invest in property markets soon enough if the government is in their back gardens peering through their windows. It's another very important point here, right? I know this is not a real estate show, but it is an important point. If your second property, if your investment property is now a dangerous investment because the government can come and seize it from you, people are not going to do that anymore, right? And so we may see a lot less housing because people are buying properties to create rental properties as investments so that other people can go in there and rent. So people just say, well, we're not going to build houses anymore because the government's just going to take it. All right. Lauren says, hey, Rob, relationship status with your landlord is what this is going to boil down to, in my opinion. I feel like mom and pop landlords will be fair if the relationship is good, but complexes and high rises won't. I agree with that, Lauren. I think that is a solution to a lot of our issues in this country, more, sort of local solutions. Hey, just work it out with your landlord. Work it out. But the government coming in and telling people, you don't have to work it out. We're going to work it out for you. That's the problem, because it incentivizes people to let things get bad like they are right now. If the government just said, look, sorry, I know it's COVID, but you have to figure it out. Move in with your family. Sorry, make do. Go to your church. Go to your local, shelter. Figure that out. I'm pretty sure we would have been just fine. The government caused the bubble. They caused the lockdowns. They caused all of this stuff. And so now people are not incentivized to build those relationships. Frustrating. We have It's Ed says, Rob, don't forget about Delta LTE and Delta 5G. I forgot about the 5G Delta. Yeah, I forgot about that. Looks like the Lambda variant is totally vaccine resistant. That's not medical information. That's just a passing comment, right? We don't know about any of that medical stuff here. Article on Very Well Health, though, if you want to look that up. Delta LTE, Delta 5G, yeah, fast, really fast. You get good. You get good speeds with those. Realtor Patty says, a landlord can do routine maintenance. A landlord has to give the renters notice. That's from Realtor Patty, giving us some real estate talk. We got Speech Unleashed says, I thought the whole point of the extended and extra unemployment was to help people afford things. so much that people are refusing to work because they get more money to stay home. So why wouldn't they have the money to pay their rent? Because speech, they were spending it on boats, man. They were out there partying it up. They were taking a year off. They're getting free money and they don't have to pay their rent. Are you kidding me? It's a vacation. It's a government vacation. COVID, don't have to go to work from home, check in every now and then, probably still get a paycheck from them also. So the government is causing this. Yes. All right. A couple more. 3 Girlie says John Jay was the first. And yes, he was. Yes, thank you for that. John Jay, the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, one of the authors of the Federalist Papers. That's right. Federalist. Yeah. Thank you, 3 Girlies. And the first Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. Yeah, I knew that too. All right, I'm getting giddy on this segment. We got to move on to the next segment. All right, Shay O'Shea says, aloha, Rob. I just took the July bar exam out here in July. We have a harsh homelessness problem as it is. And I know that landlords out here are starting to push tenants out extrajudicially. I can't give legal advice until I'm licensed, but is there anything new lawyers can do to get involved? I'm interested in advocating on behalf of both good landlords getting screwed by their tenants and good tenants getting screwed by their bad landlords. What would you do if you were a new lawyer starting your new career during all this pandemonium? So, it's a good question. That's an interesting question, because that's an interesting area of law where you're sort of picking both sides. So my first instinct on this is that it's hard to split the middle on something like that. So it would almost be like me analogizing to say, well, in some cases I defend you against criminal charges, and in some cases I'll prosecute you. I want to prosecute the bad criminals, but I also want to defend the good people. Right? There's a little bit of a contradiction there. I'm interested in helping the good landlords, and I'm interested in helping good tenants. I think that from a marketing perspective, from a firm development, from a for a consistency thing, if you're very interested in property law in this area, I might pick a side. And if you're interested in why, there's a great book that I'm going to refer you to. It's called Your Stand is Your Brand by Patrick Gentempo. And he talks about these little contradictions. Now, I appreciate what you're trying to do here. You're trying to help people, right? You're trying to help good people solve their legal problems, help good landlords, help good tenants. But you're going to have some difficulty there, I think, working on both sides of that coin. I would read Your Stand is Your Brand. Think through what your stand is going to be before you start your practice. Get very clear on what that is. And be articulate with that. If it's going to be for landlords, what are you fighting for landlords? Property rights, dang it. It's their property. What are you fighting for if you're representing the tenants? Livelihood, a home, the American dream, right? And so you identify what those are and stick hard to that. That would be my thought. And the more you speak out and the more you get behind that passion, the more response you'll get. Congratulations on passing the bar. Good luck. I'm sure you passed it. Love it. Love it. We had 2 attorneys here who just took the bar, and they're excited as hell. They had this sort of the post bar exam glow. We made it. We survived. So that's a lot of fun. We have a farmer's daughter says, not to toot my own horn here, but we are debt free. I used it to pay everything off. That's amazing. That's an amazing thing. A couple super chats that just came in from, we got a couple more. Sorry, I missed these. Says this one from Leah says, my question is, are they going to extend this insane unemployment? Yeah, probably, right? Because it's going to be on the same justification. Oh, we're still kind of locked down again. We still got people who are not vaxxed, and we got to just continue to support people. Because if you don't, you're a monster. We have Random Globetrotter says, the Fed won't taper mortgage-backed securities, so the bubble won't go away until at least 2023. The supply release will help deflate rental values temperature. Interesting. Yeah, see, so that sounds like a person who really knows what they're talking about. So it's complicated. We have, thank you for that, Random. Brody Z says the government is creating multiple bubbles that will crash an economy. Yeah, I think that is sort of without any question that there's a lot of that happening in many different markets all over the place. All of those questions came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over from YouTube. Big shout outs to Brody Z, Random Globetrotter. We had Ilea Ravitch. We have Susie, again, for all the super chats. Claire in the house with a lot of love and support. I appreciate all of you. Thank you very much for that. All right. So in our next segment, we're going to change gears a little bit. We're talking the former president. Donald Trump, a lot of tax problems Allegedly. The Democrats are doing everything they can to dig into this. They've been doing it, I think, for the past like half decade now. Every stinking time Donald Trump comes up, well, what does his taxes say? Did we get those tax returns yet? The Democrats are sort of been doing cartwheels in the House of Representatives over this for a very long time, and they're sort of getting their wish on this. Do you remember who we talked about when we were first talking about the Department of Justice recategorizing what the Democratic House Ways and Means Committee is allowed to do? What I'm saying here, previously the Department of Justice said that they do not have access to a president's tax records. Biden takes office. Suddenly, the Department of Justice policy changes. Who changed it? This woman. Her name is Dawn Johnson. Talked about her previously, not going to go through this again, but she is with the Office of Legal Counsel, okay, which is like lawyers for the government. And they came out and they wrote this opinion that said Donald Trump's tax records are now fair game. Came out on July 30th. As a quick recap, they say as long as this serves a legitimate legislative interest, then that's good enough. The executive branch has to give it over to Congress because Congress is a co-equal branch. And the legislative branch, as long as they're acting in, quote, good faith, okay, and in furtherance of legitimate objectives, then they can get those records. Only if they lack a legitimate legislative purpose can they be denied. So here they say, in this case, this attorney said that the chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee has invoked sufficient reasons for requesting Trump's tax records. Therefore, it can be disclosed. So let's remind ourselves, what is the standard? What is the standard here? The government says these tax records are now available. Give them over, Treasury. Why? Because they say that these are legitimate legislative purposes. The reason the government wants them, the reason House Ways and Means Committee wants them for legitimate legislative purposes. Also, because they're doing so in good faith. They're also doing so in furtherment of those legitimate objectives. So that's what we have to ask ourselves. We're going to go through Donald Trump's response. He's filing a countersuit and a counterclaim to stop all of this from happening. And let's take a look at it in a light most favorable to him, as we always do here, right? If it's a non-moving party, let's take a look at it in a light most favorable to them. Glass half full for them, take the benefit of the doubt. Let me show you the headline here, the title document. This is Donald Trump suing several different people. And I don't want to get confused in this here, right? We've got multiple interveners. We have Donald Trump Revocable Trust, DJT Holdings, DJT Holdings Managing Member. We have LFB Acquisition Member, Trump National Golf Club, okay, all of these different entities. We have defendants, we have cross defendants, we have plaintiffs, we have counter defendants, we have interveners, we have counter claimants, and we have cross claimants. Okay. A lot of funky civil finger pointing going multiple different directions. And so sort of this is, if you have a person A here and you have a party B here and A traditionally sues B, well, B might file a countersuit against them. But also you might have C who wants to intervene in the lawsuit, join A and then sue B. And then B also wants to sue C now. And then C says, wait a minute, I didn't want B to sue me. Now I think that A is actually really responsible. So even though I was joining them as a plaintiff, now I'm also filing a counterclaim against A. And it's just a chaotic mess. Okay, the whole thing's madness. Good reason I don't do civil law. But that's not really the point of what we're talking about. The point here, good faith, are the Democrats on the House Ways and Means Committee, are they trying to get Trump's tax records for legitimate legislative purposes because they're acting in good faith? Let's see what you have to say about this. This is what Donald Trump has to say. Filed this August 4th. You can see it's 37 pages long. We're going to skim through some of it. And they give us a history lesson here. So we're going to read through a little bit of this. I think it's important so you understand just what a sham this whole thing is. And you can decide whether it is for a legitimate purpose or not. But you'll see once we go through it, it's clearly not. During the 2016 election, Trump declined to close his taxes, citing ongoing IRS audits. We got a lot of that. Tax returns came up during a second debate. Hillary Clinton brought it up, said he's trying to hide something, right? We all remember that from that time. After the election, Democrats in Congress and across the country became more eager to get their fingers on the tax returns. During Congress, they were still in the minority party. Many Democrats gave a variety of reasons for wanting the president's returns. Their statements had a common theme. The tax returns would contain damaging information about Trump. and Democrats would release it to the public. Nancy Pelosi said that there was a popular demand to do so. Committee Democrats released a report saying that they remain steadfast in our pursuit to have his tax returns disclosed to the public. Which also begs the question, right? If we're looking at this in a light most favorable to Trump, you can make the supposition that what they're asking for is just a fishing expedition. Okay, prosecutors use this all the time. When defense attorneys ask for things, they say, oh, it's just a fishing expedition. Oh, you're just looking for stuff. Trump can make that same argument. There's really no evidence that there is anything nefarious in his taxes, to my knowledge, right? A lot of speculation about it, but at this point in time, they didn't have the records. That's why they're fighting so hard to release them, because they speculate that something is going bad in there. But is that enough to just go in and get somebody's information? They say yes. All right, what else we have here? We have a ranking member who was then, his name is Richard Neal. We have Representative Lloyd Doggett and others. They say the public has an interest in Trump's tax records. Look, so what's happening here is they're just going around through all the different Democrats and showing you everybody that's involved. We have Representative Judy Chu, another person, said Republicans block the Democrats to see Trump's tax returns. We have Bill Pascrell, another committee member, said we must see Trump's tax returns just to know how far and how deep the crimes go. Americans have a right to know if their president is a crook, they say. Seeing his returns will help us determine if he is one. Well, not really, right? That's kind of what the IRS is for. The IRS does the audits. That's why they're auditing him. They're the government entity that verifies whether somebody's filing their taxes appropriately or not. Not you, Representative Bill Pascrell. You are a political opponent to Donald Trump. There are other agencies that are set up for that, not you. But he is not getting it because he's got a legitimate inquiry, right? It's a political prosecution, as we see often. After the 2018 midterms, they took control of the House, and then now Speaker Pelosi changes gears. They start to rebuild their case, so now they're in charge. Chairman Neal knew that he could not rely on any of the past rationales that the Democrats had offered. So they went through, they know that the House Ways and Means Committee has no jurisdiction over emoluments, no jurisdiction over conflicts of interest or Russia. Chairman Neal came up with a new rationale, sent a letter to the IRS, and the whole thing, as we're just seeing here, was pretextual. He sends it over because he wants the records for political purposes. Chairman's request bore little resemblance to an effort to investigate how the IRS audits the president, right? So if they're saying that this is a concern about whether Donald Trump is a criminal or not, whether he is actually violating the law, why do they need the actual tax records? Why don't they go over to the Treasury Department and say, hey, we have some speculation here. We know that these are confidential things. This is the president of the United States. Why don't you tell us what the results of the audit are? First of all, are you doing an audit? Yes. Okay. So when is it going to be done? Okay, so then you're going to tell us if there are any illegalities there, right? Yeah, we'll tell you, because we're the IRS. And they didn't. It's the Democrats wanting to go around that to get something because they know it'll be politically damaging to Trump. Justice Department agreed. In June 2013, they said you can't have the tax records. The extent the IRS, okay, so they said this is an IRS enforcement thing. Then the OLC confirmed that, which is the Office of Legal Counsel. Chairman Neal and other majority members, they tried to get Congress to do this, but now they had to come up with an alternative reason for a new request. So the committee's request is part of a broader nationwide effort by Democratic officials to expose Trump's financial information to the country. This is what they're asking for here in Trump's suit. They want a declaratory judgment that Chairman Neal in April 2019 and June 2021, that those requests are unlawful and unenforceable, saying that they lack a legitimate legislative purpose. They exceed statutory authority. They violate the First Amendment. They violate due process. They violate separation of powers. They want a declaratory judgment that the U.S. government is not authorized to comply with any of those requests. They want an injunction that stops any of those requests. So an actual court order that prevents them from doing it. They want them also from taking any other actions to disclose. They want a permanent injunction ordering all ongoing examinations to stop, a temporary restraining order, reasonable costs and expenses, including attorney's fees, and all other relief. Signed off on here by Patrick Strawbridge, filed August 4th, 2021. So that is Donald Trump's response. And it's also counterclaims and cross claims, and everybody's getting involved in this messy litigation. But the question is, are what the Democrats doing on the House Ways and Means Committee, is that in good faith? Is that for a legitimate legislative purpose? Donald Trump's not even the president anymore. And they're still seeking this stuff. They're not happy with him. All right, let's see what we've got over from questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. See if anybody's queued up on this one. Phil McCracken is here, says, Rob, are they sure they want to open this Pandora's box? I'm sure if we looked at 90% of our politicians' tax returns, we would find lots of bribery. Yeah, or you would just see a bunch of things that are sort of left off of the returns, right? Like for example, Joe Biden doesn't have to report that he received a benefit or income if he doesn't actually receive those benefits or that income. If those are being funneled through his brother, or if they're being funneled through Hunter Biden, those show up on their taxes, not on Joe Biden's taxes. And so you see this a lot with lobbyists and other people who get, benefits that sort of escape some of the observational powers of the IRS. And I think that you're right, that this is opening Pandora's box, because as soon as the Republicans are in charge, well, they can use this same basis. Once they get control of Congress and the House Ways and Means Committee, well, then they can just use the same OLC guidance to go after any Democrat that they want. It's bad precedent, but they're doing it because a lot of these things are sort of last-ditch efforts, if I can be so bold. Miss Lucky says, Dems cannot conceive of what good faith might look like. Good to see you, Miss Lucky. We have another one here from Speech Unleashed, says, what right does anyone, aside from the IRS, have to see anyone's taxes? What legitimate reason is Congress claiming to see his taxes? Because they want to investigate if the president is engaged in any criminality, right? Because they're contemplating new legislation for future presidents. That's what their basis was. We saw this when we went earlier in the week speech. We talked about the full order that came out from the OLC, the Office of Legal Counsel, and their justification, at least from Neil and the House Ways and Means Committee, is that they have to get these so that they can protect us, right? They're contemplating new legislation that would apply to presidents. Donald Trump was a president, so they need to see those things just so they can protect the country. Surprised they're not using COVID as an excuse. We have Peely Wally says, as a non-American looking in, all I can see is Democrats who obsess over Trump constantly. It is. It's really kind of a sick thing. It seems to me like an alcohol addiction. Yes, they just can't get over it. It posts America in a very bad light on the world stage. It does spread, though. Here in Scotland, our leader wanted to ban Trump back in the day because he was a so-called racist. Yawn. Yes, yawn indeed. It is kind of weird, right? I have some people in my life who are still mad at Trump. Like, yeah, they're like, can he ever go away? I'm like, he is away. He's not in the White House. Nobody talks about him on the media almost ever, unless it's in a bad light. And he's been banned off of everything on the internet. He's not even here anymore. He's not on Twitter. He's not tweeting away. I know those gave everybody aneurysms. Well, he's not even here. What are you still mad about? Good Lord. All right. But you're right. It is a sickness. It's sort of like an addiction. It's a sad thing. We have TOS Forever says, I think the demo rulers will change the laws again to violate President Trump. The demo rulers, the Dem mob, I got it. The Dem mob rulers will change the laws again to violate President Trump. Probably. Look, changing the laws is what happened last time. The laws changed. Doesn't mean the election was rigged or fake or any of that stuff, YouTube, but it does mean that the rules were changed, and they changed them on the basis of COVID, and they're going to probably do it again. Want to Know says, how do politicians become multimillionaires on 175K, 200K wages? I want to see Biden, Pelosi, Hunters, Feinstein for sure for a start. Yeah, they're all worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Sell a lot of those books that nobody wants to read. $250,000 for speaking fees and things like that. Do you think that people want to pay $250,000, $250,000 to hear Hillary Clinton speak for an hour? No, I doubt it. All right, we had some super chats also coming in. Let me see what's up here. We've got Beth Coddington says, wanted to add, you were part of the inspiration. Did I miss something? You were part of the inspiration. I'm using the existing systems for all my goals, including my weight loss, down 150 pounds. Oh my goodness. Are you kidding me? Thank you, Rod. Yes, I love you back. That is amazing. 150 pounds? That's outstanding. I'm excited for you. That's so great. Thank you for sharing that, Beth. That means the world to me. She's talking about this this program that I have at gumroad.com/Robert Gruler called Existence Systems. And it's this little personal productivity thing that I do, that I use. That is so incredible, Beth. I can't even tell you. That's amazing. I'm very happy for you. Keep it up. Great work. We have Brody Z says the government is creating multiple bubbles that will crash an economy. I think we got that one last time. Yeah, it is. It's a problem. Our last one from Locals is from John Delar says, if the Republicans win back the House, which is likely, will this stop? I don't know. If you're talking about Trump, probably not. I think that they don't like Trump as much or more than the Democrats, and they're in charge. So great questions, all of those from watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where we have a nice forum and an amazing community. Venticus Prime, we have a JM Shanahan 44 is in the house. Over on YouTube, we got Anything Goes, we've got Lay B, and many others, and we really appreciate all the support. Big congrats to Beth Coddington. Thank you, Brody, and others. Random Globetrotter for all of the support on YouTube as well. All right, we've got one more segment today. So we're kind of talking about the evictions again. Sort of. The Squad, you know who they are. The two big prolific Squad members in Congress, AOC and Cori Bush. We're going to talk about both of them today. They're very elated as of late because they had this little bit of a spectacle going on that actually worked. If you recall, they were camped outside of the White House, out of the Capitol building, because there was an eviction moratorium that was well underway, and they were fighting this, even though they were Congresspeople, and the Supreme Court said, hey, Congresspeople, you're supposed to vote on this. They didn't, and so they got really upset about this. Cori Bush was out there, I think in a sleeping bag with a chair with a couple boxes of Oreos, really upset that she had to be homeless because she got evicted from the Capitol building. So anyways, we're all kind of laughing at them, and the whole thing worked out. Joe Biden, lo and behold, as consistent as many of us would expect, just took a nice little something on the U.S. Constitution and extended the order anyways in violation of the Supreme Court. And so naturally, Cori Bush, the Squad, AOC, and many others are just elated as can be. Very happy. The Constitution is kind of a racist old document anyways. We don't like it. And so good news that the CDC did this. Very excited. And so they were celebrating all over the place. A lot of good energy. And so we're going to talk about some of these celebrations. The first one we're going to start off with is with AOC. You can see this is the scene outside of the Capitol building. And we've got a lot of people out there who are very, very excited. And so, this guy has like a sock on his head or something. A lot of face masks over here. This might be a face mask on his head. I don't know. We have, face masks over here. But a lot of people in very close proximity all gathered together for this event.
Let's take a quick photo so we can keep the pressure up so other colleagues can come out here. Yeah?
Great. All right. So we see AOC right there.
New York crew?
See her?
This is everybody, all right?
I'm going to play that. Here's AOC. No masks on anybody except her. Put that on. He puts his on too over here. Got to mask up. This guy puts his on. Violation. Okay, so there we go.
Housing is a human right on three. 1, 2, 3. Housing is a human right!
Property rights aren't. Housing's a human right. But property rights definitely don't really care about those property rights. Oh, the mask comes off. Oh. Okay. So very excited. 1 minute later. Oh, so happy. Yeah. Property rights. Property rights are human rights on 3. 1, 2, 3. Property rights are human rights. Oh, no. What was it? Housing rights are human rights. My bad. Property rights, right? I'm talking about property rights. They're talking about housing rights. I guess housing rights supersede property rights. It's going to be very concerning to them when there are no people who want to build houses anymore because housing rights are now human rights. I don't know what's going on here. The point is no mask, and that's okay with me. I'm okay with that. But I am not okay with the double standard and the moral sort of preening that comes out of these people. It's a symbolic thing that she's doing, and she knows it, which is why she puts it on her face before she takes the picture. Not particularly scared about what might happen to her without the mask on. Gets around a lot of people, takes it's going to be on Instagram. Let me get my Instagram face on. Whoop, slap the thing on there. And then as soon as the picture's over, pulls the thing back off. But she will lecture all of you and me, all of us, repeatedly about what monsters we are for not complying with these orders. It's a symbolic thing. That's okay. As long as they acknowledge it's a symbolic thing. As long as they just admit it, that the whole thing is just symbolic as hell, and it's really all for show. But she'll never do that. She'll continue to come out here and wag her finger in everybody's faces about this spectacle called a mask. All right. So did she address this at all? This video is making the rounds. A lot of people have been giving her grief. She intelligently just has not addressed it. So over on her Twitter account, nothing, doesn't even talk about it. 23 hours ago said something like, on Capitol Hill, the norm in staff culture is devised to pull back, not push and be cautious. The only way this happened is because we're public servants. So she's celebrating the eviction. Very excited about that. But nothing, right? Didn't address the mask thing at all. Retweeted that, nothing there either. Now, this, my friends, is Cori Bush. We've talked about Cori Bush here on the channel. Cori Bush, as we know, was also victorious here. Was very successful in actually getting something done. Whether it's because of her or not, right? The battle that she was fighting, she won. She was demanding a unconstitutional extension, and she got it. So congratulations to Cori Bush here for the wrecking of the U.S. government, but well done. Now, we're going to listen to this because she's celebrating, right? A lot of energy, very excited, and she is going to be giving us a very, very interesting distinction here between private security and the police. And it's very interesting because she's somebody who for a long time has been compelled to advocate for the defunding of the police. No more law enforcement anymore. We want them all going away, which concerns many people because the police keep a lot of law and order for many people throughout the country, of all stripes, of all demographics, of all colors. And so the idea that we're going to return to sort of a summer of 2020 where people were worried about their police buildings, like the 3rd Precinct in Minneapolis being burnt to the ground, or they were concerned about Wendy's or used car lots in their neighborhood, or here, malls that were being broken into, slightly concerning, all in the name of, social justice or whatever, on the back of defunding the police because the allegation from the squad has always been that the police are racist white supremacists. So now we have to ask ourselves, right? A year has passed. We see increasing violence due to the Biden crime wave taking place all across the country. And we have still Cori Bush and many other people like AOC demanding that the police continue to be defunded. So people ask themselves, well, what about my safety? What about my family? What about my personal security? Where can I be protected? If that question gets dumped back onto Cori Bush, what does she say? Oh, well, I'm a congressperson. I get death threats. My life is more important than yours because I am entitled to private security. I'm going to continue to have private security, even though I'm going to stand here and argue that the police need to be defunded. I deserve security. You do not. I'm a congressperson. The circumstances surrounding my existence are different than yours. This is a 2-minute clip. It feels like it's about 20 minutes, so we might have to take a break, but this is Cori Bush.
We're also talking about the same exact people who say horrible things about me, who lie to build up their base, and then because they lie about me, I receive death threats. Now, they don't address the fact that I receive death threats after they go on air and say horrible things about me, but then they want to say, oh, but she needs private security.
Yeah.
I have private security because my body is worth being on this planet right now. I have private security because the white supremacist, racist narrative that they drive into this country, the fact that they don't care that this black woman that has put her life on the line, they can't match my energy, first of all.
That's
this
true.
Black woman who puts her life on the line, they don't care that I could be taken out of here. They actually probably are okay with that. But this is the thing.
No, we're not.
I won't let them get that off. You can't get that off. I'm going to make sure I have security because I know I have had attempts on my life and I have too much work to do. There are too many people that need help right now for me to allow that. So if I end end up spending $200,000, if
Yeah.
I spend 10 more dollars on it, you know what? I get to be here to do the work. So suck it up, and defunding the police has to happen. We need to defund the police and put that money into social safety nets, because we're trying to save lives. What other occupation can do work that's out of their scope and still be propped up to do work that's out of their scope? As a nurse, I can't be the surgeon too. You don't want me being your surgeon and I'm the nurse. At what point do we pay police to be social workers? No,
Keep going.
we don't. How do they get to be social workers? So what I'm saying is, you do your job. Let the people who have gone to school with a particular skill set do theirs. Neither defunding the police and being able to have security because those same folks are causing it. It's two totally different.
Okay. Folks, that was like 2 minutes. I know it felt like about 2 days there, but suck it up, America. Suck it up. You got to suck it up. The police need to be defunded. You cannot match her energy, number one. And number two, she needs private security. Her life is important. She needs to be there doing things. She is a strong African-American woman. And she's not going to let, I think she's upset about white supremacists who are talking bad about her, who are, I think, maybe the same people that are the police, which is why she doesn't want the police, but she does want private security because she protects herself and wants people to be alive. And then she's talking, it's very confusing. You know, I don't know what else to do with this other than to say, sorry, America. This is the new, these are our leaders. She's in Congress and she was successful. She got exactly what she wanted. She succeeded in convincing the Biden administration to dump all over the Constitution. And she's sort of the face of the party now, as far as I can tell. She's the most successful Democrat in the entire party at this moment in time. So that's Cori Bush. That's our Congress. All right. Well, let's see what we've got from questions over here from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Cori Bush. All right. Let's see what's here. We've got Sweet Potato. That was from Trump's taxes. Let's see here. We've got the squad. We've got Vienticus Prime. Don't worry, I'll train you to say it right yet, he says. Vienticus Prime. Thank you. You got to sound it out for me, man. I'm slow. Can someone please inform me when the general populace in any part thought it was a good idea to prop up and support any politician anywhere as a general rule? I don't. It's a great question. Vienticus Prime. I think at some point, the political class became sort of our royalty class, and people really think that they're important and they matter and that what they do is consequential and that they're in charge and that they've got good ideas and that they can control things and that they're actually thinking. And I disagree with basically all of that. So still, it's sort of like Hollywood, right? It's kind of like Hollywood for ugly people, and it's kind of it's a strange thing. We have Sergeant Bob says, buying Kool-Aid stock. Kool-Aid can't keep up with demand. Get in now. So drinking the Kool-Aid from Sergeant Bob. Yeah, that's defund the police. We have Speech Unleashed says, AOC put her mask on after she had already been sitting by everyone with her mask off. Looks like a super spreader event to me. That's from Speech Unleashed. Yes, it's all show. We have Vienticus Prime says, Counselor, I'd like to make a motion that from now on, AOC is referred to Grift Casio or Fem Trump with D. Fem Trump with D under the name. I really like it when people do that. Donald Trump did that when he called Little Adam Schiff, Little Adam Shh. Content warning, shh. We're not going to do it. Said Little Adam Shh on the Twitter account, and then he put D, California, after that. I was laughing for like 3 days. His Twitter account was so amazing. I really do miss it. ATL says, love how AOC only wears the mask for the photo op. Also, a tool. It's a spear thrower. Awesome. Thank you for that. Educated me on that. A tool is pronounced a tool. It's a spear throw. Love that. All right. So a tool. I'm going to probably forget that one, but Hopefully you'll remind me and not take too much offense. We have Daddy Biden is in the house, says, I think you're misreading this. We all know that AOC was putting the mask on to spare us from her donkey teeth. Oh, that's not Biden. That's not nice. All right. But you're right. They're pretty big. We have Speech Unleashed says Biden has no issue giving in to them because he knows that SCOTUS isn't going to do anything about it. SCOTUS is still too scared that they're going to pack the court if they slap the Biden administration. You're right about that, Speech, which is why I said if we had a legitimate Supreme Court that they would. But I don't think that they will because they are scared about that. They're going to say, oh, you're right, Delta is bad. Okay, so one final extension. Don't do it again. If I had to guess, that's probably what it's going to be. I hope not. I really hope that they say, no, excuse us. This is the Constitution. I don't care if you try to pack the court. This is still unconstitutional. If they don't do that, man, we're in a tough world here. And they probably won't. So we'll see. We've got another no-namer here says, how can they chant defund the police? Isn't that the Republicans' fault? Then hire private security at 70 to 100 grand a year and say they deserve it because they're important working for you. Yeah, their lives are important. Yours, not so much. Maybe you should run from Congress. Jeremy Matrita says, hey, Rob, I'm all for Congress to doing something to address the massively rising housing prices across the U.S. The wrong thing to do is to lead people to believe they have a right to housing. If they want free housing, I'm okay with low-income housing, but they need to keep in mind that beggars can't be choosers. Yeah. So Congress doing something to address the massively rising housing prices, it would probably be to get out of the housing markets, right? Stop saying that you can live anywhere without paying rent. Might be a good start. Sergeant Bob says, a bit off topic, but my pal retired Detective Venny told me that last month, 9 more PBP officers left. That's the Portland police. Also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong there. Also, assistant chief is taking a job in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He could have stayed in Portland for a few more years. Yeah. So we've been seeing that, and I think that's perfectly great. Move. 9 more left. They're not welcome in Portland. They're saying that the police have to solve systemic white racism to be a part of their new gun violence team. It's like a qualification. We talked about it on the channel. Okay. Yeah, we'll leave. We can't do that job because that's an impossible thing. I know it makes you feel good as boneheaded community service or community city council members, but not possible. So we can't apply for that job. So we're going to go to Green Bay. Bye. And then the cities are going to crumble, and they're probably going to blame it on, white supremacy or something. Thanks for that, Sergeant. We got Peely Wally is here, said, I've heard of AOC and her crew. What a mess. What a disrespectful crew they are. I always think these days, if people that died for us back in World Wars fighting for the way of life that we did enjoy could only see us today, would they be happy? I guess not. It's a sad way to be, and it's going to just get worse because of the so-called COVID. Yeah. I saw there are a lot of good memes on this, right? It's like, in the 30s or 50s or whatever, any day, right? Any other era, you go back and it's a husband and a wife, and they're saying, honey, let's have a kid. Let's go buy a house. Let's go build some land for ourselves and build a life together. And now it's like, oh, let me check my vaccine app and make sure it's working before I go down to the grocery store. Do I have a mask in my pocket here? Mask up. Okay. Sanitize everything. Bunch of scared children all over this country, which is not actually a bad thing if you're somebody who's aggressive and competitive. Okay. So think about this, right? You might say it's sad that a lot of people are just turning into little, bags of mush all over the place. But if you're somebody that likes to work and you like to win and you like to compete and you like to go out there and conquer your life, take ownership of it all, and you're not scared about what all the scary things in the world, you have a very serious advantage in this world. Very serious. Because there is an entire segment of this population that is still acting like scared little children 18 months after the fact. And they're going to continue to be for the next 18 months because of all Delta, Gamma, Beta, Max, Pro, Prime, whatever, indefinitely. And they are sidelined largely. Many of them, not all of them, but huge portions of the country are sidelined, which means there's a lot more for the productive people in the country for the time being until they eliminate all of the other, infrastructure. Cori Bush is here. Cori Bush is here. Cori, I wonder if she's mad at me for what I said about her. You just mad, white boy? Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh. Okay. Oh, my gosh. I can't believe that. All right. All right, I can't read that. But she called me a racist, which I just knew was coming. I knew it. I knew it was coming. You just mad, white boy? Cori Bush said that. I didn't say that. Nadarb is here, says, I would 100% not be sad if she were can't say that, Nadarb. God. Taken out of Congress. Taken out of Congress. All right. Okay. So borderline, Nadar, borderline. John Delar says, I'm not buying that they extended it because of Cori Bush. They were getting pressure all over the place. Her protest was totally weak and lame. I agree, John Delar. I was being very facetious there, but sometimes it's hard to tell with me. I know. So I am not giving her any credit, right? She has no idea what she's doing. We heard from her on that last clip when she was out there with her Oreo cookies, and she doesn't know how Congress works. So I'm not really sure that she moved the needle on this thing. I think it was probably well underway in the first place as a way to wedge the Supreme Court versus the rest of the country. It's triangulation, right? The White House is in sync with Congress because the Democrats control both of those. And so neither one of them can appropriately accept the blame. So they have to build a wedge in where they can make the third branch, which is not under their control, the scapegoat. And they've done that pretty masterfully. Well done. I think it was probably orchestrated, well in advance. Want to know says, Portland police need to play her video at city council meeting in front of the council. See if they come up with any conclusions there. We have It's Ed says, long post here says, glad you were posting these things. We need to hold them to the fire just like they hold everyone else to the fire. We need to use their tactics against them. Think about it like this. When Ted Cruz responded to AOC and agreed with her tweet regarding the investigation of Robinhood and GameStop, AOC responded with something about him trying to kill her because of 1-6. It was quite a while later that she was making an issue out of it. We need to do the same. We need to make a mountain out of an anthill with these types of people. They are fake, and we need to make a spectacle out of their follies. As far as Cori Bush goes, she thinks she could use race and gender to stop the argument and shut down the opposition. I am not guilty for being white. No one else should be either. So I will continue to hold her accountable for her actions. She is a liar and corrupt. And in all fairness, AOC is hot. She has that crazy ex-girlfriend vibe that wants to burn your house down. But still, she's hot. And so there's a certain level, Ed, of potential arson that's acceptable for many men in this country, myself included. There's a level of it. Well, the arson risk, if it's like a 3 out of 10, you might accept that. That's that's an acceptable arson risk. When you get above 5s, like 6, 7 level of arson, you got to really be, she's got to be, it's got to be, worth it for that. But yeah, a 3 or 4, you can kind of have a good 3 or 4 arson level. You can ride that out for some time. You just want to make sure you're cognizant of that. If you start to see a 3 turn into a 5, you gotta get out of there. So be careful. All right. So good comment from It's Ed. And hey, by the way, as to the rest of your comments, I think it is sort of pertinent, right? There are a lot of conservatives who are going that direction, and I think that they are seeing some success. It's not. I like to sort of do it a different style. I think that you can be kind of serious and poke fun and use satire and really sort of rub their noses in it from a sort of a fun, jovial perspective without getting too emotionally attached. I think that's sort of the secret sauce. If you become too sort of emotionally invested in it, then it's not like you're playing with clowns anymore, right? So you got to make sure you have a little distance there. These people are clowns. They're actually like not that intelligent, and they are running things, and they're logically. I'm not talking about just Cori Bush or AOC. I mean Congress. I mean a lot of our elected officials. You have the anomalies. You got guys like Cruz and Rand Paul, and there are many smart people in the Democratic Party as well. I just don't know them, but they are intelligent. But a lot of the people that you see out there that are sort of making the most noise, I'm not sure how effective that is going to be long term. I think it is going to be effective for rallying the base up, but I'm not so sure that the libertarians or the conservatives should have AOCs or Cori Bushes, right? Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene are kind of going that route, and I don't know how effective that is for winning national elections, candidly, right? I think that the Democrats are going to suffer dramatically from this defund the police stuff. They're going to feel it in 2020 and 2022 and 24 here pretty soon, I think. So the question is, I just saw a super chat come in. The question is, what are the end goals? I think it is always a good idea to make sure that you are having fun with some of these things. And I think it is effective to be satirical and sort of poke fun at them, right? If they're going to act like clowns, call them clowns. And we're going to do that here from time to time, right? Not all the time because it gets a little bit repetitive. I don't want to turn this into Fox News, right? GOP is good. Republicans are good. Democrats are bad. Because I think the GOP is just as idiotic as the Democrats in many, many ways, but we just don't hear from them. What are they doing right now? I really don't even know. I would love to beat up the Republicans, but they're not doing anything. They're just sort of asleep at the wheel, letting the Democrats do whatever they want, extending eviction moratoriums, just making sure that these vax pass things are rolling out all over the country. They're not even saying anything about it. And that's not good. All right, some other ones. We've got Three Girlies is here, says, you mean to tell me this loudmouth lunatic used to be a nurse? I don't want her being my surgeon, my nurse, my congressperson, or someone I ever have to listen to for 2 minutes. She's a hypocrite. She doesn't even know what's coming out of her mouth, completely ignorant. Yeah, she is actually, she is ignorant of this thing. 2 minutes. It felt like 20 minutes, didn't it? And I let it go. I didn't have to let it go, but I endured it. And I wanted you to experience it with me. It's a bond. We both suffered for 2 minutes in that thing. And we're closer as a result. Don't you feel closer? We just went through something together. We have no doubt, says, government shouldn't be allowed to have minimal security protection. That way they can rely on making good decisions for their protection. Right. Or maybe they should have the same security that we have so that they pass stuff that is good for us as well as them. Not two tiers and two systems. Says, so Nadarv says, I sent it that way purposely as a joke. I said taken out of Congress a little later in the comment. I wouldn't want to get you in trouble, LOL. Yeah, Nadarv, I saw it. So I read the first part and then I was up and I hit the ejection button and then I read the rest of it and I went back to it. But I understand your point. It is fun and I appreciate it. I just am like super skittish, as you can imagine, right? We just got remonetized. And a lot of our videos, by the way, are still being automatically demonetized. So the channel is remonetized, but the videos, so I turn on monetization right here. As soon as I finish the show, it's going to be demonetized. And then I'm going to apply for it for full monetization. And then they're going to tell me tomorrow, after all the views are already done, because the show sort of expires, after the day's news, then they're going to turn the monetization back on. And so there's almost like nothing that comes from being remonetized other than we get the super chats, which I really am grateful for. So a little bit of a show update. We're still sort of finagling our way through the YouTube journey, which is why I'm like, I get a little, gotta shut that one off. But I'm not upset about it, Nadarb. It's a funny, fun comment. Thank you for it. Another one here says, an officer I knew had his car torched in the car park next to the police building by an ex-girlfriend. Arson. Yeah, that's like a level. That's a full arson. That's a 10 out of 10 there. It didn't help that he had told his gal that he was an investment broker while dating her. She saw his photo in the newspaper. True story. Yeah, that's a 10 out of 10 full arson. You have to break up with her at that point. It doesn't matter, what she looks like or whatever. Gotta go. Jeremy Matrita says, Rob, you do a great job of finding a balance between presenting information and facilitating a conversation, as well as having fun and having a sense of humor. One thing we have over the left is a sense of humor. Yeah, so I definitely agree with that. They're not that funny. And I went over to, who was I listening to the other day? I was listening to, what's the guy's name? He really does not like Shapiro. He was the guy who, Seth said something or other. He's got like 1.2 million subscribers on his channel. And he went up against, he sort of surprised Steven Crowder, whatever that guy's name is. I listened to a full show yesterday, and I'm like, these people are just out of their minds. All right, so let's jump into some super chats. Let's see what we've got going on in here. All right, we have, that was from Beth. Amazing. Beth's doing amazing. We got one here from Brody Z says, the issue with these Democrats is they don't know they're actually hurting citizens in the long term with their temporary political propaganda. Totally agree with that, right? We hear this all the time, that the Democrats are the humanitarians, that they care about people, that they care about the immigrants, the migrants, bringing their families across the border. And so we have to be good people by accepting them into the country. What happens then? Well, we see what's happening at the border. People are living in squalor. People are bringing their families, treks through the desert in August. Do you know how hot it is here right now? It's hot, and they're dragging their families across. There are people dying, getting raped. Kids are getting abducted on the journey to the border. Then when they get to the border, it's a disaster. There's COVID all over the place. There are no facilities, and it's a gigantic problem. And so what they're doing is they're actually causing more suffering. But they feel really good here in America. You know, all of the liberals are all here, and they're, oh gosh, you know, well, at least we're doing the right thing. We're doing the right thing. I know it's hard, but this is the right thing. And it's not. It's actually hurting people, and it's creating this second class of non-citizens, sort of this sort of slave undercurrent, you know, people who are going to be here that are sort of in this pseudo-legal status, and they're going to be able to be taken advantage of and sort of live in the shadow for the rest of their lives. That's what the Democrats are creating with their immigration. Same thing with all of this other stuff. We're going to give you a bunch of stimulus money. Where'd the money come from? Well, we just made it up out of thin air. So what does that do to the people who are very happy to get their $1,200 a month or whatever it is, very excited about it, not realizing that the trillions in dollars that have been added to our money supply are going to hurt them seriously in the long run due to inflation. They're seeing it everywhere they turn, but they're not cognizant enough to recognize what is happening right in front of their eyes. The government knows that, which is why they're going to continue to do it. All right, that was from Jared. Oh, no, that was who was that from? That was from Brody Z, thank you. I forgot where I was. Brody Z, thank you for the super chat. We've got Zulu says, it's good to hear you as always, getting a super chat in while still allowed by YouTube. Thank you, Zulu. Zulu, I appreciate you being here. I saw your comment at the start of the show. I love hopping in here and seeing your comments. And I like that you're always just kind of giving me that little bit of the needle. You know, I kind of like it. I'm not a masochist, all right? Not in a weird way, Zulu. But it's nice to see you here. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the super chat. We have Eddie Oliver is here, says, Rob, want to practice karate in the garage? You better know what movie that's from. I don't think I do. What is that from? Is that from Napoleon Dynamite? I'm going to guess. Is it? I might. We have K Bean is here, says, I just wanted to one-up Zulu. Thank you. Thank you, K Bean. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny. So thank you for that, and I appreciate. I'm watching the chat right there over in YouTube. I see Zorro, Just Cause. I see Eddie Oliver's in the house. We've got Treats, Half Irish, many others. A lot of good stuff going on over there. All right, let's see if there's anything else over on watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got Peely Wally is here, says off topics, but how are the rules with Twitch? Are they so ridiculous as Facebook and YouTube and so on regarding free speech? You know, Peely Wally, I don't actually know. You know, Twitch was just one of those things that was really easy to get connected. So I just have an account on there, but I really don't know much how it works or spend much time over there. But I think I might actually spend some time over there. We'll see. We'll see. I've got so many different things. I'm trying to sort of prioritize things. I gotta stay focused. I'm like that. What's the there was a Disney movie or something where like squirrel, right? I feel like that sometimes. So I really don't know how Twitch is. I haven't gotten any warnings from them or any emails saying, hey, you are a white supremacist. Hello, stop that. Haven't gotten that from them yet. So I've gotten that from YouTube, several of those. And Discord said that we are basically Nazis. So we'll see. We'll see if Twitch has any feedback for the show as it continues forward. But we'll just keep plugging along wherever they'll have us. We have No Doubt says you need to watch the Hot and Crazy Matrix. Yeah, that's kind of what I was playing around with there. One of the best videos ever, Hot Crazy Matrix. Probably very offensive to women out there, but I apologize in advance for all of that commentary about it. It's a lot of fun. Okay, it also applies to guys, right? Guys also are insane, so it's not a sexist, chauvinist thing. We're all a little bit whacked. And that's part of the fun. That's why life is so fun and crazy and wild. All of those questions came over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Great super chats as well over from YouTube. Big shout outs. Thank you to Eddie Oliver, K Bean, Bonnie Speck, Zulu Zite. We got Brody Z, Beth Coddington. Congrats again. Brody Z, Random Globetrotter, and all of you who supported us there as well as on Locals. Quick reminder, or quick welcome. We had some new people who signed up last night. Welcome. We had Outside Voice joined in with a yearly sub. Thank you for that, Outside Voice. Welcome to the community. Atul is also here, I believe is how I say that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Atul 144 is in the house. We have Teeny Teen Easy is also in the house and joined up, as well as big welcomes to CP565, Lauren CS, Boneless, Ravioli, Venticus Prime, along with Harry Wonderdog, all signed up over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I hope that you can all join us on our next monthly Locals meetup, taking place via Zoom, August 28th, couple weeks away from now, 7 to 8 p.m. at night. It's a lot of fun. Cameras on, cameras off, doesn't really matter, but we just kind of want to, build a community, put names to faces, ask some questions, and sort of just connect with each other. It's a lot of fun. We've done it a few times, and it is a lot of fun. So, final shout outs. Venticus Prime is here saying that they're going to have a drinking game every time I botch his name. So that'll be fun. And we have some shout outs over there as well to Jay Shamanahan. We got Zucks in the house who is here. We have Maddie Adams, Johnny Apocalypse, K-Bean, Eduardo Espinoza, and many others on YouTube. Everybody, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. We are going to be back here same time, same place tomorrow, 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man, everybody else, have a tremendous evening. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.